let's pivot into a more positive note, because you wrote just an amazing article about the growth of Cal Raleigh and Logan Gilbert specifically within the Mariners organization, getting drafted together, being roommates in the minor leagues, coming up and having success together on this Mariners team. When you were digging into this article, and you can find it at Yahoo Sports, Jordan wrote, it's fantastic, very long, very in-depth on that whole story with the two of them. What blew you away the most when you were digging for stuff on that story and finding these little tidbits here and there? What was the coolest thing?
Yeah, I mean, really cool opportunity to get to talk to Cal, Logan, talk to Dipoto, talk to Service about all this stuff. I mean, obviously, like, you know, the inspiration of it was not just that they, of course, Logan being an all-star for the first time and Cal kind of proving himself as one of the best catchers in the league this year. I think people are finally starting to acknowledge that. But that it's happened together and that, like, they defined this era of the Mariners, you know, in a very real way. I mean, when you think about it, like, listen, not that fans shouldn't be frustrated with the standards and whatever, but, like, all Cal Raleigh and Logan Gilbert know on the Mariners is a winning team. And in that sense, this could end up being by far the most disappointing team that they've played on. You know, I mean, when you look at the win totals that since they've arrived, I mean, they have I'm pretty sure a top 7 or 8 winning percentage in baseball since those guys have, like, been a part of the team. And so that doesn't feel like an accident because of the stability that both of those guys have provided. The fact that Logan has not missed a start since he was called up, the fact that Raleigh has amassed a larger workload, and in some ways this is, you know, problematic because we know that at some point it's probably hampering his ability to contribute offensively. But, like, that is incredible. I mean, that is the definition of franchise pillars, and that was the inspiration for the story. And I think talking to people around the team and talking to them, it very much reflected that. And it is as simple as, I don't know where the hell they would be without these guys. And for as frustrating as this season has been, those two have been a constant. And Cal's obviously still a flawed hitter to some degree, but for what he provides in every aspect, you really can't ask for much more in a franchise catcher. I say this all the time on our shows. Not knowing who your catcher is such a difficult place to be as an organization, any organization. Like, figuring out who your catcher is just so important. And the Mariners figuring that out with Cal is just it can't be, you know, overstated. No, it's just such a huge deal.
These pitchers are great, right? And every single one of these guys is unique and dominates, and it's so fun to watch. But paired with what Cal's done, like, where would this rotation be if Cal Raleigh wasn't here?
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And Adam Jew just wrote a great story about his kind of recent back and forth with Brian Wu, kind of getting him to an even higher level. And that's the other cool part, right? I mean, besides Castillo, who, you know, arrived via trade, all these guys come up, and while Logan came up with him, I mean, Kirby not that far behind, and Miller and Wu, by the time they get there, they're like, oh yeah, like, Cal's the guy. There's no question about who I can, you know, put my trust in and know that the game plan and everything that we are, you know, looking to do as a cohesive unit is very much in sync. And it's just not an accident. I mean, that's really the basic way to put it. Is these are extremely talented pitchers, but you just cannot overestimate or underestimate, I should say. You cannot underestimate how important the catcher is to that equation on a daily basis. I think that's true too. I know the bullpen has struggled a little bit more recently, but generally over this run, he's been a huge part of that success as well. I mean, the fact that he can feel comfortable with, it's not just those 5 guys, it's so many more. Think about how many different relievers have shuffled through this roster over the last few years. A lot of them have had a lot of success, and I'm sure Cal's a big part of that as well.
I think my favorite thing about the article is when you went back to where they were in college, and Logan doesn't pitch in the middle of the week because Logan was an absolute stud, so he only pitched on Fridays. And they would only play Florida State on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And Logan would be sitting there thinking, like, who is this dude just tearing us up? This dude's a pain in the ass, Cal Raleigh is. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they just land together in the same organization. Yeah. And there's the whole part about Cal not having as great of a junior season, and he slipped down draft boards. But the Mariners were like, "Oh, no, we see this.
Yeah,
no, we're not falling for, I'd say, the deke of him underperforming a little bit. We know what this guy is. So I thought that was super cool, especially just given the differences of the two places those two guys went to school. The only similarities those two universities, Stetson and Florida State, share is that they're in the state of Florida. That's it.
True.
It's not close.
I'll give you a little backer. I didn't end up including this in the story, but Logan was kind of just talking about that dynamic, between the two. And obviously Cal growing up in a baseball family, his dad was a head coach at Western Carolina. His dad was a head coach at Tennessee, right? So like Cal was kind of raised in this, whereas Logan's just one of the other skinny kids in Florida who are hoping to throw hard someday, And so Logan was saying how he, likes to tease Cal that he was like the golden boy and everyone was given to him. And, Logan's the small school grinder, whatever. And then he's the one. And I told Logan, Logan, you were the first round pick, bro. Like, I was like, let's not forget who actually was drafted first. So I know that, listen, I mean, he's right that like, there's a big difference between playing in the Atlantic Sun and playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and he's right about that. But I thought that was a funny dynamic, and especially too like their friendship and their relationship too, because they've been there side by side since the beginning. Speaks it's very, very unique in that sense, and I'm grateful, as someone who just follows this team a lot, follows this team closely in terms of off the field stuff. Having definitely talked to Logan before his debut, both of these guys have come out of their shells so much since the start of their careers, and that has also been extremely cool to see, and also not a coincidence because that generally happens when you establish yourself as two of the best players at their position in the league, and that's what makes them comfortable to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. When Cal came up, he barely talked, and then fast forward to the end of 2023, he's saying, "Hey, listen, ownership, this isn't good enough. Like,
sure,
we need more from you."
100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was another. And I could have. One of the challenges of the story, and I'm very happy with how it turned out, but especially for me, just like by nature, I want to be comprehensive and completionist, and like I didn't even touch really I mean, I mentioned, his homer to the clincher. We were 10 rows apart, Lyle? Right?
Yeah.
we were both at that game. And like, I didn't even like say the word big dumper once in the story. Like all that's part of the Cal Raleigh lore too. Like that's its own article that I think is interesting as much. Of course, I had to kind of condense it and keep it focused on the two of them kind of in tandem and them becoming what they were. But there's so much with both of these guys, and that just felt like the right time to kind of highlight that story. And obviously that was, that story was, I guess, dropped like right after the Mets series, and then vibes were high, and not so much a week later. But those two guys are doing their part, man. So that's all you can ask for them.